selfishly, I decided, opposed to turning in my uniform for a suit and going into corporate America, I decided I was going to go the furthest route possible from that and just take all my savings that I've accumulated over a career of service and, buy some cows and buy some land and buy some equipment and get after it.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Spenders Show. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Max Krupp to the Liberty Spenders podcast. He is a retired U.S. Army colonel and a former Green Beret with 28 years of service. Although, once a Green Beret, always a Green Beret. There is no former. So, Max has traded his combat boots for cowboy boots as the owner and operator of Halo K Cattle Company in Throckmorton County. I hope I have that right, in Texas. So he runs a veteran-owned ranch. He produces 100% grass-fed, hormone, and antibiotic-free beef with a focus on ethical, stress-free practices. So from the special forces to sustainable ranching, Max is bringing a unique perspective on leadership, liberty, and building a purpose-driven life, which is awesome. So we're excited to dive into your journey and your story. Welcome, Max.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I told you right before we aired, I was excited about this, reading more stuff about you and your company. So a little teaser, we're going to hear about your thoughts on a one-man ranch and a little bit about your service and some of the leadership lessons that you've carried over. So with that, starting off, 28 years in the Army, that is incredible, mostly with the Green Berets and rising to the rank of colonel. I just think of this and that's a lifetime of very high stakes missions that demonstrates, of course, leadership under pressure. And now you're out here running your cattle business. And so I'm curious, how do the skills that you honed in the special forces, like maybe strategic thinking or how to stay calm in chaos, show up in the day-to-day work of running your ranch?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really nobody's ever posed it like that. What's unique about the U.S. Army Special Forces is they kind of thrive in ambiguity and they call it operating in the gray. So when you're a Green Beret, the expectation is that there are no black and white answers and you have to kind of make the best decision in the gray zone, if you will. And so that parlays itself well into ranching because really no day is ever like it is the day prior, and whatever you have on your little planning list or checklist or whatever, you may not even touch one of those things on your list and end up doing 10 things that you didn't anticipate. So sometimes it's good to have a plan, but really part of being a Green Beret is operating off contingencies. And that really lends itself well to what you have to do in animal agriculture because just things tend to go haywire. And there's so many circumstances beyond your control, whether it be environmental or nature or just working with animals in general, bad weather, et cetera, that it kind of gives you that ability to not get down on your luck when something goes sideways. It's just kind of the way, it's kind of almost an expectation. And then from a strategic standpoint, I've kind of turned in the campaign planning and understanding, what's going on in a theater. And from a rancher perspective, your strategic planning is really doing things that make the land and the animal and by extension, the business more successful over the horizon. Because you can do certain things that might provide you a short-term profit and will be beneficial for the pocketbook, but could overall hurt your cow herd or damage the vitality and the output of your land if you're really just trying to squeeze every nickel out of something short term.
Well, it makes sense to me. And of course, I wish Kurt was on here for this today. As we were sharing, we had
his loss.
I know, exactly. It is his loss. But I say that in part because even though his family did not farm the land they were on, he was surrounded by that. He did live out in the country. And so he always talks about raising dairy beef feeders and going to the fair. And he at least understands a little bit about that.
Sounds like he understands a lot.
Yeah, well, probably a lot. I'm probably not doing him a service. But I get what you're saying about there's so much, that would be unpredictable about it. And I just think it's interesting because when I'm thinking about what you would have been doing, serving as you did, and then you think to yourself, yeah, I'm going to start a ranch. Like how,
Right.
I just think that's pretty interesting because I know you had some pretty cushy opportunities after retiring, right? Lucrative corporate jobs, you had board positions. I mean, those are the kinds of things that people would jump at.
Right.
But you chose to start a ranch instead, which is no small feat in and of itself. And you've also said that this was about serving America in a different way. And so I would love for you to just unpack that for us. What was it about ranching that felt like the right way to make a difference?
Right. So the answer is twofold. I think one of the answers is selfish and the other one is selfless. So
okay,
let's start
that's
with
great.
selfless,
A little bit of both in there.
That's probably better. So in a selfless perspective, when I was in the Army, particularly like the first 7/8 of my career, like I loved every minute of it. It was just the best fit for me. Whenever I put my boots on the morning, I was 100% bought in. I believed in what I was doing. I love this country, and I felt like the best way to give back to that country is to serve in the Department of Defense. Now, obviously the Department of War, but it just gave me a feeling that I was doing something that was value added. And I felt like when you get a little later in your career, you go from the all-star to the person that mentors future all-stars. And so you're just really helping take your generational knowledge of what you've done during your career and passing it on to future generations so they can continue to serve our country honorably in some of the most arduous circumstances potentially possible. So that's the selfless. As far as the selfish, that last 1/8 of my career, when you get to be a colonel, you're no longer really doing the things that are in the commercials. It's basically running around from meeting to meeting and teeing up, decisions for generals and having to run to this meeting and not being able to go to the bathroom between these meetings and not being able to eat lunch. It's just, it was a huge shift, one that I wasn't necessarily bad at, but one that I didn't really like. So selfishly, I decided, opposed to turning in my uniform for a suit and going into corporate America and probably having a carbon copy of that kind of lifestyle, I decided I was going to go the furthest route possible from that and just take all my savings and all the assets that I've accumulated over a career of service and, buy some cows and buy some land and buy some equipment and get after it. And so I get a lot of solace from that avenue that I've chosen, albeit it may not have been the most profitable. In fact, I can say with 100% assurance, it's not the most profitable. It's probably the least profitable avenue. That if that's what's scratching your itch, that's not the way to go. But as far as overall satisfaction and kind of peace of mind and peace of self, like that was the decision I decided to make. And I really don't have any regrets doing that.
Well, and that's what it's all about, right? When you find something that you love and you feel like it's connected to a purpose that's bigger than yourself, like you said, you can get so much peace and enjoyment and fulfillment out of that. So had that been in your background before, or you had to, I'm maybe not, but it seems to me you had to have had exposure or some confidence level that you could take this on.
The answer is yes and no. So I grew up in El Paso, Texas. So for those that are geographically challenged, that's in deep West Texas. It's basically north of Mexico and south of New Mexico in a very small sliver. And it's a low desert.
That's a very helpful description. Yeah.
It's a low desert.
I know where it is, but that's very helpful. Yes.
But there are ranches out there, but the topography and the grasslands out there, the ranches have to be absolutely enormous, where you're running one cow head per 50 to 100 or even more acres. So the ranches in close proximity are just enormous. And so there's not that many ranchers, so to speak. So I didn't really have much exposure to it when I was young, albeit I saw some of the places here and there, but I never really got hands-on, if you will. But luckily, when I got married, my father-in-law, he lives in a town over from me right now. He was like the town accountant, but also an independent farmer rancher as well. So he would basically do tax returns all day and then shoot out before dark to go take care of the cows, check things or whatever, and then work hard all weekend and holidays. And so I really admired that work ethic and that ethos that he had. And bringing it back to my career of service in the Army, I felt like this is something that I'm doing that's helping more people than just myself, and kind of feeding America, and then providing some niche customers the ability to know where their food comes from and get to enjoy the certain protocols that I'm pretty stringent about with my cattle, to include no growth promotants, no antibiotics, kind of an all natural environment, and making animal welfare my number one priority. A lot of people are sensitive to that for good reason. And so I feel like I'm doing a good service in that respect. So it's professionally satisfying, but also personally satisfying getting to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I promised we'd get into that because that is so fascinating. So I want to do that, but I just wanted to park on this for 1 second, because I know that, one of the reasons I love having, business owners, entrepreneurs like yourself on is just because I think that for so many of us, we need to be reminded, we need to hear stories of other people who have taken the leap, right? Who've left opportunities behind, who've stepped out in faith, who've made tough decisions to do something that they feel like is impactful. And so I know for you that your decision even to retire was shaped by some tough moments, like the Afghanistan withdrawal and the military's, COVID-19 vaccine mandates. And there's a number of people who are going to relate to some challenges and new insights I think they had during that kind of time period. And so I imagine those were also pivotal for a lot of veterans. But I don't know, maybe could you share how those experiences maybe pushed you towards this additional life of independence? You hinted on that already about what you wanted to do, and you wanted to have your own protocols. But what does it mean to you to be doing this your way?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'm really glad you brought it up. So, being in for 28 years, I served under multiple presidents, starting with Bill Clinton all the way ending with Joe Biden. And so really it was never, just new administration comes in and old administration leaves and you just keep doing your job as a soldier. And it really wasn't that impactful. But during that last kind of 2 years under that last administration, it was just this strange cultural zeitgeist where there was the triangulation of the COVID mandates, which were in my opinion a little onerous on some of the people that had hesitancy on that. Then you had the Afghanistan pullout, which I'm a combat veteran of, and that was very distressing to a lot of people, because if you're going to really look at it objectively, I wasn't really against leaving, but the way that we left, I felt was a dishonor to our partners over there, and really amplified the fact that we can do something for 20 years and just throw it all away, and there's no net benefit and nothing to show for it whatsoever. So that was distressing to me as well. And then I won't go into great detail, but then with the new administration, there were certain edicts that came forth that, in my opinion, were not for the good of the force and not for design for health and readiness, but designed for more politically expedient things. So that whole triangulation of those three things, underpinned with me running from meeting to meeting it all, was really the impetus for me to decide to leave in haste. So I was always kind of knew in the latter part of my career that this was what I was going to do, as far as raise cattle and ranch and stuff. But all those factors kind of balled into one, expedited my departure earlier than I probably would have left.
Mm-hmm. So I love this. So one more, I just got it as a follow-on to that then. So for anybody, listening, maybe there's veterans who are listening or thinking about transitioning out of service, or just anybody who's thinking about starting their own business or jumping into agriculture, just based on your experience and what you've now what you've now seen in the many years since you've launched, what advice would you give them to take, or as they're considering maybe taking that leap to make it work?
Yeah, that's another great question. You're really good at this, Kristen. I mean, wow. I guess I'll use my social media as an example. Typically, people utilize their social media to peddle their wares and, in my case, sell all natural beef direct to consumer right off the ranch. But really what I'm trying to do in addition to that with my social media is just show people a day in the life of what it's like to be a one-man ranch. And so I might get a lot of DMs or traffic. Some of it may be about buying beef, but a lot of it is more Q&A on what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and people that are starting off with questions or whatever. So I would say a good portion of my time as far as interfacing with the public, I'm on the phone at least once a week with some guy or gal that's an aspiring person in agriculture that wants to learn and wants to avoid pitfalls and has questions. And I love doing that. And particularly if they're a veteran, I really love doing that. But I love doing it for anybody, because if there were mistakes to be made, I think I checked the block on almost every one of them. So
I've run into everything. Let me save you some time.
So I can give them great cautionary tales and really help steer through some of the pitfalls that I've negotiated, because although Green Berets aren't known for like putting their head down and just going, full speed ahead without really thinking through it, that is my default personality setting. So I did kind of do that when I got into ranching and tried to muscle through some of the things that required a little bit more thought and finesse. And so now I'm a little for it, and I hate for someone to make the same mistakes that I made.
If you're listening to this show, it's probably because you understand something most people don't. Marketing to Liberty Spenders isn't just about ads or tactics, it's about trust. And in the real world, trust moves through relationships. And that's why private introductions and deal flow are such a core part of what we do.
So FastPass is a private introduction and deal flow network for Christian and conservative leaders who already have influence and want to scale fast. It's not open networking, it's intentional introductions between people who already share alignment. We've seen one client land a $25,000 opportunity from a single introduction. Another told us that FastPass has become his largest source of referrals, not because of volume, but because of fit. And yet another closed her equity round at a key moment just due to the right introduction.
When you book a one-to-one consult with us, we're not handing you a list or making big promises. Instead, we're having a real conversation about what you're building, who you want to meet, and whether FastPass makes sense for this season for you. So no pressure, no hustle, and no awkward pitch from us.
Yeah. If you're ready to grow through relationships instead of forcing everything on your own, head to libertyspenders.com/FastPass and book a one-to-one consult with us.
In worst case, you leave with clarity. Best case, the right introductions change the trajectory of what you're building.
Okay, back to the episode. And Max, I think what's so powerful, what you just described, and why we were excited to talk with you is because of that. So I know that's a big thing for you. For a quick shout out, Halo K Cattle. You can find them on social, check out the Instagram to see those things. And you now know he reads those DMs, so you can hit him up and ask him some questions.
Absolutely.
But I get what you're saying about trying to help the next man up, right? And I think that's such a beautiful common thread in entrepreneurship, is that idea of mentorship, trying to share what you've learned. I know that I take great pride in it, even though I feel like even still, after all these years I've been in business, I have a lot to learn. But for somebody starting out, I really can help them. I can save them a lot of time and headaches and pain.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's a beautiful thing. And it's a lot of what our Liberty Business Alliance is all about, is creating that community, because we need that. We need to help each other. So now let's get into what I promised about this one-man ranch, because I think that is one of the most impressive things about Halo K Cattle, is that you are doing this yourself.
Right.
Which, even when I was reading this from my team, I thought, no, that can't really be true. Like, what is going on? With no extra hands, you're just out there making it happen. You're running the business. And that just blows my mind as a huge, huge undertaking. So even though people can see this on your social, walk us through a little bit of what it's like to be a one-man ranch. What's the toughest part? And maybe what are some of the moments that make you think, oh, yes, this is why I do it?
Okay. Well, I might be able to start high altitude and then we can dial in. So I'm what you would call a conception to consumption operator. So I have my herd of mama cows and I select all the bull sires that they're going to breed with because I want to get a certain genetic profile to get the best beef. And then I want to breed some cows for maternal traits as well so I can retain them to be future moms as well. But I supervise that. I buy the bulls. I supervise putting the bulls out. I supervise the whole window in which they're together. And then I'm in direct oversight of when they calve. And then we take care of the babies and ensure that everything goes smoothly in that respect. And then like you mentioned, I keep them with their siblings and their moms longer than they need to. So they have a good, healthy immune response from being with mom for a long period of time. And then when I wean them, I do it in a very methodical way where it's not as much stress on the animal, where they kind of naturally flow away from mom instead of being kind of ripped away from mom, if you will. And then at that point, I decide who I'm going to keep to be future Halo K moms. And then I decide the steers that I want to keep to try and provide the best beef profile as possible to my customers. And so I raise those steers and heifers separately, some for the next generation and some for the dinner plate. And it really culminates with, after all of that, I'm literally the guy that loads the cattle on the trailer and takes them to the processing plant and offloads them. And that's kind of the life cycle on the cattle side. But meanwhile, I do all my own advertising. I do my own bookkeeping. I'm the guy that takes the orders. I'm the guy that liaises with the customer through the entire process and lets them know how's it going. And then in the event that they want delivery, I'm the guy that liaises with the delivery company to ensure that they get their packages and stuff like that. So it's just every day is something in that life cycle is happening and I'm having to touch it. There's no day where I'm not really touching some semblance of that thing I just described.
Yeah. And the reason I asked is because, for many people, myself included, I hear that and that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
To me, right? It's like, it's not for everyone, right? Like, I think it's interesting because somebody else would hear that and say, Kristen, why are you promoting this? Like, this doesn't scale. How could you possibly run your life? All these things.
Right.
But the reason why I wanted to highlight it is because, there are so many pictures, lenses, portraits of business ownership, of entrepreneurship, of how you can work things around your lifestyle, what gives you purpose and meaning, and how you can do that. And I just think your story is so compelling and it's just very interesting. And I think it also shows that, for someone else who's maybe sort of interested, they might be like, are you kidding me? This sounds like I have 50 jobs and what if I get sick? Like what happens?
Right.
But what the point of that is, if you reframe that, you also say, oh, you can get started. You can do these things. You can start. And you don't have to be intimidated by, let's face it, this has got to be one of the industries where, the layperson like me is envisioning a lot of people, involved and so I think for me, I just think it's a beautiful opportunity to highlight some of that for people. And I like hearing stories of this because I just know how proud you are of what you've built, and you should be.
Well, thank you.
And there are ways to do that. And it is possible. And I'm hoping that it's going to be inspiring for some people, especially when I know the emphasis you're putting on, like you said, keeping things stress-free, antibiotic-free, all those things to give people an opportunity to know where their meat's, where it's coming from, what does that process look like, where it's hidden for so many of us. And I realize that this information will be dated by the time this episode airs. But at the time of recording, we've just had a major win, in my opinion, with Secretary Kennedy, with the new food pyramid, and so many eyes, I think, are being opened to the health of our food, eating real whole foods, knowing what's in our food, right? And just appreciating that. And so I think you are, you have a great macro trend that you're writing that is supporting this industry. As more and more people are interested in this, are looking for ways to be more healthy with what we put into our bodies.
No, I really appreciate you saying that, because that from an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's not the most scalable business model. I mean, I scale incrementally. Every year, my cow herd gets a little bit bigger. I take on a little bit more acres. And I've had people approach me that they're like, hey, I really like what you do. And they kind of almost want to partner and be like, hey, if we access this, but then if we can do this, we'll get more pounds and on these steers and make more money and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, I'm going to have to respectfully decline, because I like what I'm doing, because I have my own ethos on how to go about it. And I think at least some of my customer base likes the fact of the way that I do things, and they appreciate buying from someone that's going to be with that baby from when it's 50 pounds to 1250 pounds. And so
it's that comfort, right? Yeah. Like the title of this episode will not be How to 10X, right? Like learn from this guy who scaled his business and, launched, went 100X, and like, that's not.
I'm not the Elon Musk of the cattle business.
We have stories like that, right? Yeah. That's not going to be the title of this, right? But there is something about this beauty of how it can look different, right? Yeah. And you can chart your own path, and you can build something that's meaningful, that serves to meet your needs and gives you the independence and the freedom that you want. And it doesn't have to, entrepreneurship doesn't have to be, oh, I'm not successful if I don't have 50 employees, or if I'm not selling 50, $10 to $50 million. I mean, because also most businesses don't get anywhere close to that. And so that's what I think is so unique, is that for people listening, I just think it's good to be reminded of this. And it's also just, I don't know, maybe not naive, but just there's something so beautiful and pure when it's like, oh, I know this person. Right. Like your customers, they know the quality, they have this trust. And we've interviewed several people like that who maybe have small teams, but they are still very personally involved in, whatever their product is. And it's something natural, something that you would eat or consume, which I think is really meaningful to people when they're trying to understand the health impacts. And so yes, it's not in everybody's plan or in everyone's life goals to scale something huge.
Right.
And so I think that's a great thing to share. So you mentioned, I think, is it 5 years you are of selling beef, or 7?
I've been running cows, which is a colloquialism for having cows. I've been running a cow herd for about 7 years, and then selling direct to consumer for just over 5.
Okay. Both of those numbers were in my head, and I knew I didn't want to shortchange you. So
it might be because there's this, scary statistic that most ranches fold within the first 7 years. So I'm like almost 8. So maybe I made it.
Yay! Congratulations. Right.
But that is
5 years of selling directly to consumers. It's a big milestone. It's clear you've built something special with Halo K, and you're reaching, health conscious families who really care about this and where their food comes from. So just quickly, how did you figure out how to connect with those customers? And in your mind, what's been the secret sauce for you to make these direct sales work? You mentioned something that you do on social, which is a greater education piece. Right. But what have you learned? What's been working for you?
Well, I really, this also will be you can tuck this under the wing of this guy's not going to 10X. This is also not the best marketing campaign, but I really don't actively market hard. Like, I just show people what I'm doing. And really the vast majority of my customer base are all referrals from previous customers, which they might get a little taste of what I'm doing via social media, or we have a lot of correspondence via email or phone call or whatever. But once I kind of get a customer, they'll either share with a friend or tell their friends about it. And then certain people that have that desire to know exactly where their beef is coming from, make sure the animal is treated in an ethical and humane way its entire life, and it's free of any additional growth hormones, antibiotics, etc. That's appealing to a lot of people. And so they like to find it, and especially if they can find it from someone that's in the care of that animal its entire lifespan. I think that's a win. So I do saying I don't actively market is not true, because anytime I make a post or something like that, it's trying to, let people know what I'm doing out there in the world. I literally
referrals means you've got happy customers, Max. So you never want to discount that. That is usually for so many customers their greatest source. And we have multiple episodes about these types of things, because for a lot of business owners, it's also the number one overlooked way of growing their business, growing their leads. Customer acquisition is just, oh my gosh, are you taking advantage of referrals? Are you asking for it? Are you rewarding, incentivizing? Are you putting it into your work? And so it's nothing to sneeze at, and it means you've got something good going on. So getting back to this really quick. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, getting back to this the 5 year and the 7 year, right? Itch. 5 years selling direct, and then 7 years basically running the ranch. And I know that you said like most new don't make it past that. So, and I know you are not just surviving, you are expanding, right? You're having to keep it within a certain amount, but that's obviously huge in a tough industry. So what would be one other thing, right? If other people who are listening are business owners or they're aspiring entrepreneurs, what lesson would you share? What do you think has been the key to beating the odds? Are there any specific choices you made early on that you feel like set you up for success?
I think specifically, I can say that whenever I was going to make a decision, I always erred on the side of caution and opted for incremental opposed to exponential. So if I was going to do some kind of change, whether it was how I run the cows or how I manage the land or how much I'm going to grow this prospective year, I always decided, you know what? I got a couple more years left in me. So for 2026, I'm going to do a 10% change instead of a 50% change, because in the event that was a improper decision, I still have a little bit of ability to pivot, opposed to kind of putting all my chips in the middle of the table and losing it all, or making a big mistake that would be detrimental to the animals or the ranch over the horizon.
Yeah. Well, it's good advice, because there are times when, the other advice somebody else would say, why would you just do something small when you can, 100%. Really make a big, and again, for some people that works. But what I think is important is you're maintaining quality, right? You're not making anything too big to where it throws off the operation of the business or throws you off. And you can kind of, tweak as you have time to make sure that it's the right thing.
I'm resilient I can absorb shocks if I go make a small
I'm
thing.
Sure I have no doubt. Colonel, I'm sure your tolerance level for that is extremely high. So let me ask you this now, pivoting to a little bit of the quality of what you're providing, right? The grass-fed, hormone, antibiotic-free. Not everybody knows why that matters. Who cares? So if you could sit down with somebody who's new to this, right? They're getting educated about this process. What would you tell them about the benefits of choosing beef like yours?
Right. So at first, I would say that any beef that you buy in the grocery store is good beef. And American cattle ranchers and the entire architecture that puts beef in the grocery stores is the best in the world. So the United States produces more pounds of beef with less cattle because of the overall management practices that we do here in the United States opposed to other countries. For niche customers that are interested in really getting an animal that is directly off the ranch and doesn't go into the regular traditional cattle cycle, which typically the traditional cycle is someone like me is a cow-calf operator and gets a baby. They'll sell it to somebody. It'll get backgrounded on a wheat field or some other kind of grass, and then it'll go to a feed yard for finishing for anywhere up to 180 days. And so I basically do all those phases myself. And so that animal is under the custodianship of one person and doesn't change hands. And so I try to provide that really more natural product with no growth hormones or any of antibiotics or anything like that. Granted, if I have an animal that's sick, I will doctor it and give it antibiotics, but I'll just remove it from the beef program because certain people are very sensitive to that. And I want to be able to provide them that beef that they want. And I don't feel like I'm in direct competition with the large scale beef operators or packing plants or anything like that, because I think there's a consumer base that's interested in what I'm doing, and I want to be able to provide them what it is they desire. And I feel like with me doing all those phases under my own tent, I can provide them the best quality product at the lowest price because there's no intermediaries or middlemen as well.
I'm thinking about this too, because you mentioned, right, you do your own marketing, some of those other things. So I know you've been out there telling your story on some podcasts like Cattleman's Call, and I think you're in Texas A&M's Where's the Beef video series.
Yeah. What's funny about that is that's training
cool
my
exposure.
competitor.
Yeah.
So that's the Where's the Beef was put on by the A&M Extension Service to mentor aspiring direct to consumer beef producers. And so a lot of people are like, why are you telling everyone all your trade secrets and how you do your ranch and stuff? And I was like, man, I'm kind of the opinion that a rising tide raises all ships. And so even when I explain that there's that niche that I satisfy for certain customer bases, I feel like regionally speaking, if there's someone, and I've done it before, people from New York have called me and said, hey, I'd like to order a quarter steer from you. And I was like, that's probably more logistic trouble than it's worth. But I know a lady in New York, upstate New York, that does exactly what I do. And I can put you in touch with her and she can get you squared away. And so I'm really just not trying to profiteer and outcompete everybody and, be on the cover of Cattleman's magazine or anything like that. I just want to provide a good service and a good product for people that are wanting it. And if it's good for the customer as far as geography and all that kind of stuff, then I'm definitely ready to help them out. But if it's not the best fit for them, I'll like to get them to somebody like me somewhere else. Yeah.
Well, and whoever is concerned about that question, I understand the impulse to ask it, but they clearly don't appreciate the difference between knowledge and execution. Because just because someone has told you how to do something, that is far and away different from, are you going to actually execute it? Do you have the skill set, the muscle, the diligence, the pain tolerance, the risk tolerance, right? You still got to work through all the things. And so it's actually a funny thing that you brought that up, because it's one of those myths that I think people don't appreciate. It's why so many business owners are very happy to share. In fact, for a lot of people, that's a great way to do marketing, is because it builds trust and authority and credibility. And we tell our clients this all the time, that not to be worried about that. And especially in the age of there's a YouTube video for everything and there is no shortage of information where you can try to read about how to do something, get examples. But the key is always going to come down to execution and your own ability to do that and to solve problems along the way. So absolutely. You're 100% right. And, I know you know this, but just as a reminder for anyone else listening, if you're worried about that, don't be. And besides that, trust in the Lord that He will provide. And if you're doing as well and you're helping other people, you will be taken care of. So it's a good in the larger scheme of things, that also sometimes is a great thing to fall back on. Indeed. So on that note, actually, now I've got to ask you something. So have you, sharing your journey from Green Beret to rancher, has that helped spark interest in your business, or have there been feedback from listeners or viewers that surprised you maybe, or just stuck with you? Yeah. Besides the people who want to do what you do. Right. I think it's definitely not hurt. I think a lot of people think the story is kind of compelling. It was funny once I called a customer, a potential customer, to explain some of the intricacies of the ordering process and stuff like that. And she's like, I just can't believe I'm talking to a Green Beret on the phone. And I was like, well, it's really not that big of a deal. And then she's like, I can't believe. Yes, it is. And then
she was like, I can't believe I'm actually talking to a cattle rancher as well. It's like 2 for 1. And I was like, okay, well, that's very flattering. But I'm just a
You're like,
normal
this
guy.
isn't Yellowstone. So like,
Yeah.
just,
I'm not
calm down.
ripped. Yeah. So I think it is. I think it is interesting, and people. It's a personal interest story that I think is helpful to market as well.
Again, something we preach, something we're passionate about, Liberty Spenders, is telling your passionate story. And so we've talked about this in our book and lessons that we've learned about marketing. And so once again, works for all sizes of businesses, all types of businesses. But when people can connect with you on an authentic level, when they feel like they know something about you, it just builds trust and people want to do business with you, whatever that looks like for you in your industry. And I just think it's amazing. Not to mention, it feels great to share some lessons and again, share wisdom with other people.
Absolutely.
And I love that you're out there doing that. So I know you're very passionate about ethical ranching. We'll do this, then we'll get to our lightning round. But if you look down the road, what do you feel like is your big vision for the future? Maybe at Halo K Cattle, or maybe beyond that, in terms of trying to inspire other people to care about this, to care about the quality of the food. What does that look like for you? When you think about it down the road, what is it that's got you inspired?
Well, I do have some numbers in my head that I would like to scale to and then plateau, which those are sensitive. I don't want to potentially share that, but it's just basically the number of my cow herd. But at the end of the day, when I hang it up or turn this over to somebody else, I just want them to, I want people to feel like they dealt with a guy that cared about his animals and somebody that cared about the customer and always did honest and fair business dealings with them. And then I guess another goal would be, I want as many people in America, not necessarily to sell beef, but to be in agriculture, even in the most micro type of construct.
I'm telling you, sustainable farming and all these like hydro, like these hybrid.
All that hydroponics.
I've got friends that are trying to do these things. So it's definitely a trend that people are.
I just think it's good. It gives you a little bit of purpose. I think it gives you a little bit of food security. I think it's just a good thing. And I think if people could reconnect with the land, whether it be in your backyard with a beehive or whether you just decided to buy 5 acres and run 2 cows that you kind of have as pets, I just think it's all good. And it's better than living solely in a virtual world where you're completely disconnected from grass, wind, rain, and sunshine. So
yes. Makes me want to go outside right now, even though at the time of this filming, it's like 20 degrees outside in Indiana. So a little less enjoyable than down in Texas. But anyway, with that, it is time for our lightning round. So we ask the same 3 questions of every guest. We try to keep it to 90 seconds or less for each question, although there's no buzzer. This is on the honor system. But I know that I'm sure you will hit that mark.
No doubt.
With flying colors. So you kind of maybe even hinted at what might be your answer for the first one. But, thinking ahead, we're another 50, 70 years, God willing, in the future, right? Maybe you're laying in bed, you're looking back on your life and you're thinking about, how will you have known that you've left a legacy that you're proud of or a life well lived? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, for me, it's just that anybody that did any business dealings with me can say that's a good guy, and that any other neighbor rancher or anybody that's in the know that sees how I treat my animals can say also, that's a good guy. That's a good rancher that takes care of his herd. And so that's really, and then lastly, anybody that I can inspire to get involved, like even on the smallest or largest scale that they're comfortable with, to support American agriculture. That's a 3-pronged win for me.
Love it. All right. Now for something totally different. All right. What is something that has captured your imagination? It's just got to be something off topic. It could be a hobby, a good book, spiritual insight. Maybe it's a sports team you're rooting for. What's something that's taken you down the rabbit hole or that's really got your imagination going?
So this is kind of funny because during my whole Army career, I always just shunned all the movies that had all the commando-y kind of stuff in it and all the shoot 'em up stuff. I thought it was like so unrealistic and just like I didn't understand why everybody was so excited about all that kind of stuff. Never really read any books on the topics or anything like that, but it's really there's a great market for it and people love it. But oddly enough, somebody that's not involved in agriculture at all said, hey, I think you might want to check out these Jack Carr books, which he's a former Navy SEAL. And I know a bunch of obviously Green Berets and Navy SEALs and stuff like that. And I just kind of nodded and I was like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll give it a look. And I just happened to read one of them and I found them quite compelling. And I think I'm on my sixth one now. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, it goes to show you. Yeah,
he's quick to judge.
Yeah, don't make your declarations about how this is not cool or smart or anything, because you could end up eating humble pie.
We have interviewed authors, and now I am so ashamed of myself because I am blanking on his name. But he was one of the early co-founders of Black Rifle Coffee, and which went on to be a humongous company valued at over $1 billion. Went public. Yeah. Oh, well, yes, he and others, but yes. But wrote a series of books while he was serving, got made into a movie, and now a series on Angel. Anyway, it's crazy. So I'll have to send this stuff to you because if you're enjoying this, right, maybe this will just be the gateway drug. To more.
Put it right in my veins. I'm ready.
But Kurt had read these before we ever got introduced to this gentleman, and I'm embarrassed that I cannot think of his name in this exact moment. But he loved them, and they're like post-apocalyptic. I mean, they're fascinating, and talking to him about it was wild. But anyway, I will recommend that if you're kind of going down this trail or this genre. Kurt can give you loads because he loves that stuff. So as
outstanding,
he's one of the people that enjoys.
Now so am I, so I can't say anything bad.
Yeah, you are now too, right? So you now fall into that category. Okay, and then last but not least, if someone unfortunately has not listened to any part of this episode and they're just tuning in right now, we love to give you 90 seconds on just Halo K Cattle. Tell them who should reach out to you, where should they go to find you, and why it is that you're awesome.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just, not to get too preachy, but I'm a firm believer that food can either be your best medicine or your biggest poison. And so I feel like some people don't really get to experience true health because they've kind of been brought up in a manner where they're slowly poisoning themselves through ultra processed, highly palatable foods and that sort of stuff. So that's the preachy part. But so I'm especially you mentioned the inversion of the food pyramid as of late. Animal protein is probably the best building block for you to have a healthy life, in my humble non-nutritionist opinion. And so if people are interested in making that one of the foundational protein sources for them, they can go to the grocery store and get beef and I'll fully support them. But if they really want something that's been raised cradle to grave from a one-man rancher that tries to do his very best to take care of his animals and not give them anything synthetic whatsoever, they can absolutely give me a call and be more than happy to help them on their direct from the ranch beef buying journey.
Love it. And apparently he may know somebody close by if it doesn't work out, right? We just heard that.
Absolutely.
So apparently Max will just refer you to
I know people
competitor. He'll just or if you're interested in doing this, apparently he'll entertain your questions and you could just hit him up and
100%.
Flood your social. Kidding. But I love this. Thank you so much for sharing. And Max, again, I'm excited to tell your story. I really think it's so compelling and inspiring, and I just want to encourage you. Your passion just comes through and what you're doing is meaningful. And I love how you're making this work for you and your lifestyle and how it's bringing joy to your life and helping other people. So that's what it's all about, folks. So thank you so much. And for those of you listening, we know how valuable your time is. Thanks for spending some of it with us. If you found value in today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future. Until next time.